Hello. My microphone got messed up again. I don't know what's going on with that. That's okay. It's fine. I just reset it every time, I guess, now. That's just the way it goes. Hello! Hi! Hello, we're back. I got my Tim Pool is a Traitor hat on. I don't know if you guys caught up with that or saw that at all, but Tim Pool and friends, like Tucker Carlson and shit, have all been busted for taking, like, a shitload of money from Russia. We're gonna talk about that a little bit more on Friday, but I thought I would mention it just because it's also got ties to Canada. Because of course it does. It got ties to the Conservative Party. Because of course it does. But what else would it be? Of course. Anyway, we're back to this. Mandate for leadership, the conservative promise. And as much as I've said, like, hey, this affects, like, not just the Donald Trump fanboys or whatever. And it doesn't affect just, like, the, like the Canadians and like people in other countries tertiarily, due to like, economic reasons and blah 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 blah. It also like affects like us and from other countries in a way that is like there's nothing stopping other conservative parties from taking notes out of this book, right? You know what I mean? So we're on page like 200 and change. Why did it go to... Okay. 203. We're on 6, Department of State. So for anybody following along, the link isn't in the description. I'll provide it again here because why not? Bonk. Here you go. In case you're interested. I don't know, like, whatever, man. Again, we bless our furry friends for exposing this for the greater good. The greater good. We are on page 103 in the PDF, and we are on page 170 or 171. Yeah, 171 of the actual document itself. So if you are following along at home, I don't know why you would be, but if you are following along, this is where we are. So let's just dive into garbage, shall we? I don't have anything to really share that much. My mint plant's doing really good. Look at this. I ate food this time. Look at it go. This was an outdoor weed that I propagated and have turned into a indoor plant. It's actually 3 plants. There's actually 3 mint plants in here. So that's cool. Alright, anyway. Anything to not be reading this. Okay, 6 is Department of State. Kyron K. Skinner. Hi, Puck. Thanks. I appreciate that. Goodbye, Puck. He just walked in, busted the door open, and then left. He didn't even do anything. Okay. Puck realized what I was reading and was like, nah, get me the fuck out of here. The U.S. Department of State's mission is to bilaterally, there we go. Whoa. This is gonna be a day. The U.S. Department of State's mission is to bilaterally, multilaterally, and regionally implement the president's foreign policy priorities to serve U.S. citizens abroad, and to advance the economic, foreign policy, and national security interests of the United States. Since the U.S. founding, and Department of State has been the American government's designated tool of engagement with foreign governments and peoples throughout the world. Country names, borders, leaders, technology, and people have changed in more than 2 centuries since the founding, but the basics of diplomacy remain the same. Although the department has also... the art of the deal. Although the department has also evolved throughout the years, at least in the modern era, there is one significant problem that the next president must address to be successful. There we go. There are scores of fine diplomats who serve the president's agenda, often helping to shape and interpret that agenda. At the same time, however, in all administrations, there is a tug of war between presidents and bureaucracies. That's kind of like the whole theme of this entire document, right? Like, we don't like, as much as we are the bureaucratic problem, we don't like the bureaucratic problem that does the checks and balances that prevent us from being more of a bureaucratic nightmare. I guess that's the TLDR of this, right? Puck checking in on the boss and then leaves. I feel like he's the boss and I'm the employee. He's just checking to make sure I'm, like, doing my job. Made a mint. I made a mint. Fuck, I want food. Also, fuck. Oh, she's reading that weird shit again. I'm out of here. He already ate. I fed him already. His food is downstairs. He's got noodles and kangaroo canned dog food. I don't know what you want from me. I got it on sale. It's expensive. I'll show it to you guys sometime. Or was I? Anything but talking about this. Since the U.S.'s founding, the Department is country... people have changed, blah, blah, blah. There are scores of fine diplomats who serve the president's agenda, often helping to shape and interpret that agenda. At times, however, in all administrations, there is a tug-of-war between the president and bureaucracies. And that resistance is much starker under conservative presidents, due largely to the fact that large swaths of State Department's workforce are left-wing and predisposed to disagree with the conservative president's policy, agenda, and vision. Sure. America went to Iraq, didn't they? That was under a conservative president, right? That's an espresso mug. Chesh is a tiny goblin. At some point, I'm gonna have to do some very real filming of what I look like in real life. I'll work on that. I'll try to do that before. Maybe on this weekend I'll try. It should not and cannot be this way, and American people need and deserve a diplomatic machine fully focused on the national interest as defined through the election of a president who set the domestic and international agenda for the next nation. The next administration takes a swift and decisive steps to reforge the department into a lean and functional diplomatic machine that serves the president and thereby the American people. Below is the basic but essential roadmap for achieving these repairs. Okay, so interestingly, side note, if they think that the Democrats are stealing the election all the time, what makes them think taking out the checks and balances on such a president is a good idea? Yeah, AI generated. Maybe. History and context. Founding in 1789, the Department of State was one of the first cabinet-level agencies in the new American government. The first Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, oversaw a small staff diplomatic posts in London and Paris. Oh yeah, in Paris. And 10 consecular posts. Today, the Department of State has almost 80,000 total employees, including 13,517 foreign service employees and 11,683 civil service employees in 275 embassies, consultants, and other posts around the world. In theory, the State Department is the principal agency responsible for carrying out the President's foreign policy and representing the United States in other nations and international organizations. To the extent consistent with presidential policy and federal law, the department also supports U.S. citizens and businesses in other nations and vets foreign nationals seeking temporary or permanent entrance to the United States. The State Department also provides humanitarian, security, and other assistance to non-U.S. populations in need and otherwise advances and supports U.S. national interests abroad. Properly led, the State Department can be instrumental for communicating and implementing foreign policy vision that best serves American citizens. At the U.S. Commission, I like how they say all this and then are like, yeah, but the Democrats bad. Okay, like, what the fuck? When making radical changes to government structures, how could the opposition party abuse the system? Yeah, I mean, you'd think that would be a good thing to think about, but these people are trying to remove the system entirely so that there is no more opposition, right? They want to put Trump in as a dictator so there wouldn't be another election, and there are MAGA people that are for that. As the U.S. Commission on National Security / 21st Century, the Hart-Rudman Commission observed more than 20 years ago, the State Department is a, quote, crippled institution suffering from, quote, an ineffective organizational structure in which regional and functional policies do not serve integrated goals, and in which sound management, accountability, and leadership are lacking. 20 years ago. 20 years ago. Okay. Unfortunately, this critique remains accurate. The neighbor dog is displeased. The State Department's failures are not due to lack of resources, as one expert has observed. The department, quote, has significantly more at its disposal than was the case at the end of the Cold War in the mid-1990s, and at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, end quote. A major source of I love you, neighbor dog. Oh, good lord. Having a time out there. In the mid-1990s, at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, end quote, a major source of, if not the major source, of the State Department's ineffectiveness lies in its institutional belief that it is an independent institution that knows what is best for the United States, sets its own foreign policy, and does not need direction from an elected president. The next president can make the State Department more effective by providing a clear foreign policy vision, selecting political officials and career diplomats that will enthusiastically turn that vision into a policy agenda, and firmly supporting the State Department as it makes the necessary institutional adjustments. I'm not annoyed. I just don't want it coming through too much. Political leadership and bureaucratic leadership and support. Focusing the State Department on the needs and goals of the next president will require the president's hand-picked political leadership, as well as foreign service and civil service personnel who share the president's vision and policy agendas to run the department. This can be done by taking these steps at the offset of the next administration. They just want to replace everybody with their own guys so they can treat everybody like shit. Like the end. That's it. This is the whole document. With special interests being treating gay people like shit, treating trans people like shit, treating women like shit, and treating the working class like shit. Oh yeah, and brown people. Exert leverage during the confirmation process. Notwithstanding the challenges and slowness of the modern U.S. Senate confirmation process, the next president can exert leverage on the Senate if he or she is willing to place State Department appointees directly into those roles pending confirmation. Doing so would both ensure that the department has immediate senior political leadership and would force the Senate to act on nominees' appointees instead of being allowed to engage in dilatory tactics that cripple the State Department's functionality for weeks, months, or even years. Again, we want to be able to put our own guys in as fast as possible for an undisclosed amount of time to try to stop the checks and balance and stop the checks and balances of the Senate and circumvent the Constitution. That's what this is. Assert leadership and the appointment process. The next administration should assert leadership over and guidance to the State Department by placing political appointees in positions that do not require Senate confirmation, including senior advisors, principal deputy assistant secretaries, and deputy assistant secretaries. Given the department's size, the next administration should also increase the number of political appointees to manage it. Wow, making the government bigger and spending more money on their own guys. That's not corrupt at all. This is definitely not how, like, Al Capone would have run his business. What? To the extent possible, all non-confirmed senior appointees should be elected by the president-elect, transition team, or the new president's office of presidential personnel, depending on the timing of the selection. And be in place the first day of the administration. No one in a leadership position on the morning of January 28th should hold that position at the end of the day. They literally want to turn the entire government off and turn it back on again. And when they turn it back on, the light that flickered, all their guys have been replaced with, like, fucking same face. These recommendations do not imply that foreign services and civil service officials should be excluded from key roles. It's hard to imagine a scenario in which they are not immediately relevant to the transition of power. The main suggestion here is that as many political appointees as possible should be in place at the start of the new administration. Support and train political appointees. The Secretary of State, so if you notice I'm reading faster at the beginning, it's because I really don't want to be here for 4 hours per chapter. That's a little bit unreasonable. The Secretary of State should use his or her office. I really wish they would stop with this gendered language, this gender equity language. Like, we all know that they're not going to vote for a woman president. What the fuck? Who are they kidding? This is just pandering for political purposes. Weird. His or her office and its resources to... I'm going to point that out every fucking day. Every day it comes up, and I'm going to point it out every time. Which should take the form of and its resources to ensure regular coordination among all political appointees, which should take the form of strategy meetings, trainings, and other events. The Secretary should also take reasonable steps to ensure that the State Department's political appointees are connected to the department's political appointees, which is critical for cross-agency efficiency and morale. The Secretary should capitalize on the more experienced political appointees by using them as the foundation for a mentorship program for less experienced political appointees. They want political interns so they can get their dogma beaten into them. Me gonna read political manifesto, also goblin, well, I don't want to do this. True. Hey, Sweet Pea, good to see you. Thanks for coming by. It's been a while. We're here for pain. Nothing's changed. The interaction of political appointees must be routine and operational rather than incidental or occasional, and it must be treated as a crucial dimension for the next administration's success. Maximize the value of career officials. I thought they didn't want career officials. Now they want to... Career foreign service and civil service personnel can and must be leveraged for their expertise and commitment to the president's mission. Indeed, the State Department has thousands of employees with unparalleled linguistic, cultural, policy, and administrative skills, and a large number of them have been an enormous resource to the secretaries of state under which they have served. The secretary must find a way to make clear to career officials that despite prior history and modes of operation, they need not be adversaries of a conservative president, secretary of state, or the team of political appointees. Interestingly enough, by the way, when it comes to like dividing lines, right? It's almost like no conservative president plays well with others. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, reboot ambassadors worldwide. All ambassadors are required to submit letters. Also, you want to talk about like conflicts of interest? Reboot ambassadors worldwide. All ambassadors are required to submit letters of resignation at the start of the new administration. Like currently? Like right now? Is that the rule? Is that true? I don't know that. Does anybody know if that's true? I have no idea. This is news to me. I mean, not that I know a whole ton of things, but I'm gonna citation needed that only because if somebody could confirm if that's actually currently the case or if that's something they're proposing should be the case. Previous Republican administrations have accepted the resignations of only the political ambassadors and allowed the foreign service ambassadors to retain their posts sometimes for months or years into a new administration. The next administration must go further. Okay, it seems like they're saying that this is currently the case. I'm willing to take that at face value. It should both accept the resignation for all political ambassadors and quickly review and reassess all career ambassadors. This review should commence well before the new administration's first day. I feel like this document should be used in schools as like a as part of like your civics program, and you have like a group of kids and they each take a chapter and they have to present the chapter and why it's a bad idea and like citation needed it and like go through and be like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is right, here's what actually happens. Like that would be a really good project. Anyway, ambassadors in countries where U.S. policy or posture would substantially change under new administration, as well as any It should both accept the resignations of all political ambassadors and quickly review and reassess all career ambassadors. This review should commence well before the new administration's first day. And again, we're back to who's doing this? Who's going to be doing all these reviews? Ambassador in countries where U.S. policy or posture would substantially change under the new administration, as well as any who have evinced hostility towards the incoming administration or its agenda, should be recalled immediately. Put in a camp in some tents that you were proposing last time? It's fucking goofy. The priority should be put in place new ambassadors who support the president's agenda among political appointees, foreign service officers, and civil service personnel with no predetermined percentage among these categories. Political ambassadors with a strong personal relationship with the president should be prioritized for key strategic posts such as Australia, Japan, United Kingdom, the United Nations, and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. So the president and all of his fucking golf buddies? That's a good idea. Righting the ship, ensuring the State Department is accountable for serving American citizens first, will require at minimum the following steps to be implemented immediately. You'll notice that this entire manifesto relies on that that sitting president, whoever they're fucking proposing, that sitting president is actually wants the best for the American people and knows how to do that and what that means and looks like, as opposed to somebody with, conflicts of interest to other countries and doesn't give a shit about the American people, right? I'm a keyboard warrior and also Wikipedia. In most cases, career foreign officers serve a tour of approximately 3 years per ambassadorship, whereas political appointees customarily tenure their resignations upon the inauguration. Oh, okay, so it's like a custom, not a set policy. Review retroactively. Again, another review. I should have drank for every review. I should have had a counter for this shit. Before inauguration, the President-elect's department transition team should... Anybody who's going to go back and rewatch any of these, please put a counter down below. I would love to know how many fucking reviews these people want done, because it's like the whole thing. It's all of them. It's insane. Like, this is not reasonable. It's not practical. Before inauguration, the President-elect Department transition team should assess every aspect of the State Department's negotiations and funding commitments. Upon inauguration, the Secretary of State should order an immediate freeze on all efforts to implement unratified treaties and international agreements, allocation of resources, foreign assistance disbursements, domestic and international contracts and payments, hiring and recruiting decisions, etc., pending a political appointee-driven review to ensure that such efforts comport with the new administration's policy. This basically means that America is reliant has no agreements or obligations with any country per president. So every 4 years, 4 to 8 years, I guess, at max. That means that no country could ever enter into any real lasting treaty agreement with America over anything, because it could just be upended by the next president and then dropped on hold. That makes no sense. It's insane. Again, I'm back to what I was saying yesterday. What happens if everybody and every other country just cuts America off and is just like, yeah, we're done with you? Obviously, it's not something you would be able to do instantaneously, but just slowly removing themselves and untangling themselves from America's economy seems like a really fucking good idea. Because again, this isn't a Trump issue. This is conservative America issue. And all of America is currently, like, their political, what's it called? Their political spectrum is just to the right now. Everything is right wing. So it's like, what the fuck? If I was somebody that mattered in another country that dealt with America, I'd be concerned by this. Anyway, I'd be using this as an example to justify my arguments as to why we need to, stop dealing with America nearly as much as we do. The quality of this review is more important than speed. The posture of the department during this review should be an unwavering desire to prioritize the American people, including a recognition that the federal government must be diligent steward of taxpayer dollars. So an specify putting all foreign negotiation and everything on hold for an indefinite amount of time until you are satisfied with a review. Yikes. Fucking yikes. America generally cuts itself off via productivity anyway. When is the last time you read anything labeled made in America? That's actually a good point. Do I want to see a toad you found? Yes. Yes, I do. Please send that to me. Implement repair. The State Department must change its handling of international agreements to restore constitutional governance. Under prior administration, unnecessary institutional factors in the department caused numerous logistical challenges in negotiating, approving, and implementing treaties and agreements. This is particularly true under the Biden administration. For example, the Biden administration, at least they're giving an example this time. For example, under the Biden administration, the State Department was considered sufficiently unreliable in terms of alignment and effectiveness such that its political leadership invoked its Circular 175 or C-175 authority to delegate its diplomatic capacity to other agencies such as the Department of Homeland Security. Huh? Having a bunch of yes men like just curtail everything the Biden administration was trying to do isn't a point in your favor. But maybe I'm just dumb. At time of publication, the State Department is negotiating or seeking to negotiate large-scale sovereignty-eroding agreements that could come at considerable economic and other costs to the American people. That's what negotiation is. You have to give and take. You can't just take all the time, which seems to be what they're implying. Although such agreements should be evaluated and approved as are treaties, the Biden administration is likely to simply call them agreements. The Biden State Department not only approves but also enforces treaties that have not been ratified by the U.S. Senate. This practice must be thoroughly reviewed and most likely jettisoned. I'm going to need a citation on that one too. The next president should recalibrate how the State Department handles treaties and agreements, primarily by restoring constitutionality to these processes. He or she should direct the Secretary of State to freeze any ongoing treaty or international agreement negotiations and assess whether those efforts align with the new president's foreign policy direction. The next administration should also direct the Secretary to order an immediate stand down on enforcement of any treaties that have not been ratified by the Senate and order a thorough review of the degree to which such enforcement has impacted the department's functions, policies, and use of resources. The Secretary of State, in cooperation with the Office of the Attorney General and the White House Counsel Office, should also conduct a review to identify... What do we have? 4 reviews? Being confused is the natural state of anyone with more than half a brain cell reading this. Yeah, thanks. That makes me feel better, because I am very confused. Should conduct a review to identify agreements that are really treaty commitments within the ordinary public meaning of the Constitution. Why would you use the layman term for something technical? That doesn't make any sense. And suspend compliance. That just sounds like you want to use wishy-washy language to be able to do whatever you want with loosely defined terms. And playing semantics. And suspend compliance pending presidential transmittal of those agreements to the Senate for advice and consent. The next administration should also move to withdraw from treaties that have been under Senate consideration for 20 years or more, with the understanding that those treaties are unlikely to be ratified. Maybe, under the right circumstances, sure. Under circumstances in which the ratification of a stale treaty before the Senate still serves national interests. The treaty, so, except for these things that are probably already the case. Treaty, blah, 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 blah. Under the circumstances in which ratification of a stale treaty before the Senate still serves national interest, the treaty letter of transmittal and submission should be updated for current circumstances. The Secretary of State must invoke most outstanding C-175 authorities and have been granted to other agencies during previous administration, although such revocations should be closely coordinated with the White House for logistical reasons. Coordinate with other agencies. You just got pissy at them for coordinating with industries, and now you're like, coordinate with other agencies. Puck is the best. Don't forget you have a puck emojis. Intricacy engagement in this new environment must be similarly adjusted to mere presidential direction. Indeed, coordination among federal agencies is challenging, even in most well-oiled administrations. Although such coordination is inescapable and sometimes productive, agencies tend to leverage each other's resources in ways that occasionally have off-mission consequences for agencies with the resources. Ideally, the Secretary of State should work as part of an agile foreign policy team along with the National Security Advisor and the Security of Defense and other agencies' heads to flesh out and advance the president's foreign policy. Bureaucratic stovepipes of the past should be less important than commitment to and achievement of the president's foreign policy agenda. Yeah, fuck other commitments. That's actually pretty in line with America. Like, fuck whatever commitments we made before. We're busy. We're looking towards, stop looking at the past. We're looking towards the future. Or Rafiki over here. The State Department's role in these interagency discussion. Jesus Christ. The State Department's role in these interagency discussions must reflect the president's clear direction and disallow resources and tools to be used in any way that detracts from the presidentially directed mission. Coordinate with Congress. Congress has both the statutory and appropriation authority to impact the State Department's operation and has a strong interest in key aspects of American foreign policy. The department must therefore take particular care in its interaction with Congress, since poor interactions with Congress, regardless of intentions, could trigger congressional pushback or have other negative impacts on the president's agenda. This will require particularly strong leadership from the Departments of State's Bureau of Legislative Affairs. This Secretary of State and political leadership should ensure full coordination with the White House regarding congressional engagement on any State Department responsibility. This may lead to, for example, the President authorizing the State Department to engage with members of Congress and relevant committees on certain issues, including statutorily designated congressional consultations, but remain radio silent on volatile or designated issues on which the White House wants to be the primary or only voice. That's a bad idea. All such authorized departments engaging with Congress is basically trying to funnel all of Congress's information through a select handful of people that are going to be allowed to lie to Congress, to convince Congress to do things and agree with things that Congress maybe wouldn't otherwise agree to. Did you all hear that news that Trump actually admitted that he lost the 2020 election? Did hell freeze over? No, I didn't hear that. Where was that at? All such authorized department engagement with Congress must be driven and handled by political appointees in conjunction with career officials who have the relevant expertise and are willing to work in concert with the president's political appointees on particularly sensitive matters. See? Respond vigorously to Chinese threat. The State Department recently opened the Office of China Coordination, or China House. Of course, that's what they call it. This office is intended to bring together experts inside and outside the State Department to coordinate U.S. government relations with China, quote, and advance our vision for an open, inclusive international system, end quote. Whether China House will streamline U.S. government communication consensus and action on China policy, given the presence of other agencies with strong competing or adverse interest, remains to be seen. The unit is dependent on adequate and competent staff being assigned by other bureaus within the State Department. Nonetheless, the concept is one a Republican administration should support. Mutatis mutandis, which I'm assuming is Latin for something. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has been, quote, at war with the United States for decades. Now that this reality has been accepted throughout the government, the State Department must be prepared to lead the U.S. diplomatic effort accordingly. The centralization of efforts in one place is critical to this end. Review immigrant. Did they just say that the Biden administration did something right without saying that they did the Biden administration did it right? That's wacky. Wow, it was in an interview. Review immigration and domestic security requirements. Arguably, the department's most noteworthy challenge on the global stage has been its handling of immigration and domestic security issues, which are inextricably related. The State Department apparent The State Department's apparent posture towards these two issues, which are of paramount importance to the American people, has historically been that they are of lesser importance than other issues and that they can be treated as a concession in broader diplomatic engagements. In other instances in which access to the United States in the form of immigrant permanent and non-immigrant temporary visas could potentially serve as diplomatic leverage, it is almost never used. To some degree, the State Department and many of its personnel appear to view the U.S. immigration system less as a tool for strengthening the United States and more of a global welfare program. Oh, okay, sure. To ensure... God, you can hear, like, the contention and the malice. To ensure the safety, security, and prosperity of all Americans. They think a welfare program would be a bad thing, by the way. I don't know if you noticed. To ensure the safety, security, and prosperity of all Americans, this must change. Below are several key areas which the department's formal and informal postures must adjust to reflect the current immigration and domestic security environment. We talked about this in the last chapter. We talked about this fucking yesterday. Why are we talking about it again? Visa reciprocity. The United States should strictly enforce the doctrine of reciprocity when issuing visas to all foreign nationals. For too long, the United States have provided virtually unfettered access to foreign nationals from countries that do not respond in kind. Bro, unfettered? Go and try and try and get a visa to America from different countries, and you see how easy it is to do. Unfettered. Fuck off. Including countries that are actively hostile to the United States' interests and nationals. Mandatory reciprocity will convey the necessary reality that other countries do not have an unfettered right to U.S. access, but must reciprocally offer favorable visa-based access to U.S. nationals. The State Department's reaction time to other countries' changes in visa policies with respect to the United States must be streamlined to ensure it can be updated in real time. So updating in real time means that somebody who came to America and got their initial visa 10 years ago when the country they came from agreed with America, that America has then cut ties with, would have their shit thrown out. Section 243D, Visa Sanctions. Visa sanctions under Section 243D of the Immigration Nationality Act, or INA, enacted into law to motivate countries to accept and return of any nationals who have been ordered removed from the United States, should be quickly and fully enforced. Recalcitrant countries that do not accept receipt of their returned nationals will seek the suspension of all issuance of all immigrant visas, all non-immigrant visas, or all visas. The consequences of this would be catastrophic. Reciprocity, thank you. These country-specific sanctions should remain in place until the sanctioned country accepts the return of all its removal pending nationals and formally commit to future regular acceptance of its nationals. Black letter implementation of this law will demonstrate a heretofore lacking seriousness to the international community that other nations must respect U.S. immigration laws and work with federal authorities to accept returning nationals or lose access to the United States. It's almost like they're trying to posture towards other countries about shit that other countries are like, okay, whatever. Like, nobody buys this shit, right? Right-seizing refugee admissions. The Biden administration has engineered what is nothing short of the collapse of the U.S. border security and interior immigration enforcement. Oh, we're back to immigration again. We're speaking in circles. The administration's humanitarian crisis, which is arguably the greatest humanitarian crisis in the modern era. What? There's a genocide going on right now. What the fuck do you mean? one which has harmed Americans and foreign nationals alike, will be don't pretend you care about foreign nationals now. Will take many years and billions of dollars to fully address. One casualty of the Biden administration's behavior will be the current form of the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, or USRAP, USRAP. The federal government's obligation to shift national security, essential screening, and vetting resources to forge border crisis will necessitate an indefinite curtailment of the number of USRAP refugee admissions. The U.S. Department's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, which administers USRAP, must shift its resources to challenges stemming from the current immigration situation until the crisis can be contained and refugee-focused screening and vetting capacity can be reasonably restored. So this is a problem that we've seen with every single one of these chapters so far. It will explain things, state these things as a problem, but not explain why or how they're a problem, and just say that they need to change, but not actually talk about the logistics of how that change is supposed to take place and what changes in policy there actually needs to be. So this document is mostly just fluff. Strengthening bilateral and multilateral immigration-focused agreements. Restoration of both domestic security and the integrity of the U.S. immigration system should start with a rapid reactivation of several key initiatives in effect at the conclusion of the Trump administration, reimplementation of the Remain in Mexico policy, a safe third country agreements, and other measures to address the influx of non-Mexican asylum applicants at the United States-Mexico border must be day one priorities. While they actually think that that other countries are shipping prisoners to Mexico to have them try and run the border. And a wall is going to fix it. This is insanity. Although the State Department must rein in the C-175 authorities of other agencies, the Department of Homeland Security should retain or regain C-117 authorities for negotiating bilateral and multilateral security agreements, evaluation of national security, vulnerable visa programs. To protect the American people, the State Department, in coordination with the White House and other security-focused agencies, should evaluate several key security-sensitive visa programs that it manages. Key programs include, but should not be limited to, the Diversity Visa Program, the F Student Visa Program, and the J Exchange Visitor Visa Program. The State Department's evaluation must ensure that these programs are not only consistent with the White House immigration policy, but also align with the national security obligations and restore limitations. Pivoting abroad, personnel and management adjustment are crucial preludes to refocus the State Department's mission, which is implementing the President's foreign policy agenda, and in doing so ensuring that the interests of American citizens are given priority. That said, there's no anybody reading this that is foreign should not be looking to go to school in America anymore. Like, if you're from another country, and whether or not your country currently has good or reasonable relations with America, if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, you should be reading this and advising students not to go and travel to America, because even if Kamala Harris goes in, this is something that can go into effect for 16 years from now, which means that the students that you're teaching now and telling that America is could be an option and an opportunity, that they're going to get fucked over halfway through their education for. You have to be really forward thinking and thinking very far into the future when you're considering what's going on with these kinds of things. I'm kind of hoping that this getting out, that Canada actually takes advantage of this. I have been Toad. You sent me Toad. Please give Toad. I must see Toad. Look at Toad. Toad break. Toad break. We see Toad break. Oh, look at Toad. Toad, look at that little guy. Oh, look at him. Oh, Toad. Little buddy. Look at little buddy. Oh, little Toad friend. Why are your nails so clean? Oh, because you don't have any nails. Bro, you need some help with your cuticles here. What's going on? Toad. Friend. Look at friend. He friend shape. Toad make me feel better. That little guy. Little guy. This looks like a painting. That's cool. Little guy, little friend. Thank you for Toad. That makes me feel better. Okay, moving on. What was I saying? Oh, you have to be forward thinking, and I really hope the Canadian government takes advantage of this and enables our education program as well as our our acceptance of foreign exchange students. I really wish we did more foreign exchange student programs in Canada. That would be great. We should do that. More of that. That would be wonderful. Glory to Hypnotoad. All right. Anyway, also, by the way, congratulations, Canada. Good job. We've implemented a all-school lunches program, and of course, only conservative asshole rejects are saying that it's bad to feed children and trying to pretend that that's part of like that. If the economy wasn't collapsing, we shouldn't be doing that or wouldn't have to do that. And the answer is this is something we should do regardless of what the economy is like. And also, Canadians' economy has been getting better recently. So I don't fucking know what these people are fucking talking about. I'm pretty sure they're just fucking toads. I mean, toads are great. They're not toads. Toads are awesome. They're just Russian bots. So that's what I'm gonna call them. Oh God, Twitter's a cesspool. I can't wait for it to be fucking gone. That said, the next, or at least gone in the sense that it's no longer what it currently is. That said, the next president must significantly reorient the U.S. government's posture towards friends and adversaries alike, which would include much more honest assessment about who are friends and who are not. This orientation could represent the most significant shift in core foreign policy principles and corresponding actions since the end of the Cold War. If I was a parent, I wouldn't be recommending my kid go to America for education right now. If I was a parent in America, I'd be recommending that my child leave America for education right now. To boarding school with you, child, outside of America. Although not every country or issue area can be discussed in this chapter, below are examples of several areas in which a shift in U.S. foreign policy is not only important but arguably existential. The point is to not assert that everyone in the evolving conservative movement, or in some cases the growing bipartisan consensus, will agree with the details of this assessment. Rather, what is presented below demonstrates the urgency of these issues and provides a general roadmap for analysis. In a world on fire, a handful of nations require heightened attention. Some represent existential threats to the safety and security of the American people, others threaten to hurt the U.S. economy, and others are wild cards whose full threat scope is unknown, but nevertheless unsettling. The 5 countries on which the next administration should focus its attention and energy are China, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, and North Korea. Why Venezuela? Can somebody please express to me why Venezuela? Because, like, Trump and Elon were praising China and Russia and Venezuela and North Korea on their podcast that we looked at. So, like, what's their issue? Why Venezuela? I'm kind of surprised Canada's not on that list. Oh, look over there. They're sneaky. Look out for them. Sneaking in all our shit. The People's Republic of China. The designs. Are you gonna try and? They're not actually gonna explain anything. They're just gonna make a bunch of brash statements. The People's Republic of China. The designs of the People's Republic of China, the PRC, and the Chinese Communist Party, which runs the PRC, are serious and dangerous. The tyrannical country, with a population of more than 1 billion people, has the vision, resources, and patience to achieve its objectives. Protecting the United States from the PRC's designs requires an unambiguous offensive-defensive mix, including protecting American citizens and their interests, as well as U.S. allies from PRC attacks and abuse that undermines U.S. competitiveness, security, and prosperity, but not curtailing fake news and misinformation on media platforms, unless it's the mainstream media that is disagreeing with us or saying we're wrong about something. The United States must have a cost-imposing strategic response to make Beijing's aggression unaffordable, even as the American economy and U.S. power grow. This stance will require real, sustained, near unprecedented U.S. growth, stronger partnerships, synchronized economic. You just talked about how you're going to treat everybody like shit, and now you're like, we need to work well with our neighbors. What the fuck? Unbelievable. This is so out of touch. From paragraph to paragraph. This is ChatGPT was involved in this. There's no doubt in my mind. This stance will require real sustained, near unprecedented U.S. growth, stronger partnerships, synchronized economic and security policies, and American energy independence. But above all, it will require... How are you going to have American energy independence relying on... whatever. But above all, it will require a very honest perspective about the nature and designs of the PRC as more of a threat than a competitor. The next president should use the State Department and its array of resources to reassess and lead this effort, just as it did during the Cold War. The U.S. government needs an Article X for China, and it should be a presidential mandate. Along with the National Security Council, the State Department should draft an Article X, which should be a deeply philosophical look at the China challenge. I'm writing that down. A deeply philosophical look at the Chinese challenge, or the China challenge. At the China challenge. I might ask all of the philosophers we have coming in October to talk about that and be like, what the fuck does this mean? They probably have an answer. That's why I'm looking to ask. If you want to be energy independent, invest in green energy, but no, Republicans want to maintain coal mines. Right, that's what I was gonna say, but then I just stopped myself because I knew you guys would take care of it. Many foreign policy professionals and national leaders, both in government and the private sector, are reluctant to take decisive action regarding China. Many are vested in an unshakable faith in the international system of global norms. They are also enamored with them. They are so enamored with them that they cannot brook any criticism or reforms, let alone acknowledge the potential for being abused by the PRC. Others' refusal to acknowledge Beijing's malign activities and often pass off criticism as conspiracy theories. For instance, many were quick to dismiss even the possibility that COVID-19 escaped from a Chinese research laboratory. The reality, however, is that the PRC's actions often do sound like conspiracy theories because they are conspiracies. For fuck's sakes. In addition, some knowingly or not parrot the communist line. Global leaders, including President Joe Biden, have tried to normalize or even laud Chinese behavior. In some cases, these voices, like the global corporate giants BlackRock and Disney, directly benefit from doing business with Beijing. You mean like Apple and Tesla? Acknowledging that somebody does something good doesn't mean that everything they do is good. On the other hand, others acknowledge the dangers posed by the PRC, but believe in a moderating approach to accommodate its rise, a policy of, quote, compete where we must, but cooperate where we can, end quote, including on issues like climate change. This strategy has demonstrably failed. Has it? I mean, I've seen improvements when it comes to climate change, but hey, whatever. Hey, they're taking the piss out of China. What's the justified hate towards Russia? I'm noticing a distinct lack of it. Yeah, they mention North Korea, and they mention Iran, and they mention Venezuela, and they mention... who did I miss? All the other ones but China, right? They mention all these ones, but then they don't actually go ahead and criticize them. They actually just focus on China. And, like, I wonder why that is. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. What? What did you fucking just send me? How could you do this to me? Why would you? I'm busy. Fucking what? Trump says Musk to head government efficiency commission. Trump adopts Elon Musk's plan for government reform, lays out economic blueprint. Oh, no. Goodbye. I don't want to play anymore. Ow. Okay, but actually, what the fuck, though? What the fuck? What the fuck? So that's gonna, I guess, go on the tavern. Where's Dark Brandon moment? Are we back to put Elon in the crate and ship him back to South Africa? Deported, extradited to Brazil. uh he can just go back and live in his emerald cave by himself. Son of a bitch. Anyway, back to... I can't believe this doc was written by... Yeah, I know, right? To the crate! Yeah, the Elon crate. Sent him back. Alright, where were we? With all the global struggles with... listen, there's a lot to discuss about that. I'll come back to it later. Probably while I'm streaming art on Twitch. We'll chat. We'll chat about the Elon crate. As with all global struggles with communist and other tyrannical regimes, the issue should never be with the Chinese people, but with the communist dictatorship that opposes them and threatens the well-being of nations across the globe. That said, the nature of Chinese power today is the product of history, ideology, and the institutions that have governed China during the course of 5 millennia, inherited by the present Chinese leaders from the preceding generations of the CCP. In short, the PRC challenge is rooted in China's strategic culture, not just the Marxism-Leninism of the CCP, meaning that internal culture and civil society will never deliver a more normative nation. The PRC's aggressive behavior can only be curbed throughout external pressure. So, they threw in that, hey, this is an issue with not the Chinese people, but then talked about how it's all about, yeah, that says 5 millennia. But that it's actually all just about their culture and philosophy as people. So, this is racist, by the way. I just want to put that out there. Elon is a couch surfer. Only couch he hasn't landed on yet is DJ Vance's. Very funny. Very funny. The Islamic Republic of Iran. Okay, now they're going to talk about others. Maybe they're going to talk about everybody here. Pain. Alright. Islamic Republic of Iran. The ongoing protests in the Islamic Republic of Iran, which are widely viewed as a new revolution, have shown that the Islamic regime, which has been in power since 1979, when Ayatollah Khomeini, I'm so sorry, became the leader, is at its weakest state in history and is at odds not only with its own people but also with its regional neighbors. Iran is home to a proud and ancient culture, yet its people have struggled to achieve democracy and have... Oh, really? I wonder what happened to Iran in the 50s. And 60s. And 70s leading up to 1979. I wonder what happened. I recommend everybody go check out the Jib podcast. That's J-I-B, Jib, J-I-B podcast. And go check that out. It's Barry and Seamus and it's fantastic and you should totally go watch it. They do premieres. You should go and check it out. Thanks for, I like my Tim Pool my traitorous Tim Pool cosplay. Hell yeah. We're going to be talking about that on Friday. It's blah, blah, blah. Iran is home to a proud blah, 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 blah. Struggled to achieve democracy and have had to endure a hostile theocratic regime that vehemently opposes freedom, like the one we're trying to instate, but don't tell anybody that. The time may be right to press harder on the Iranian theocracy, support the Iranian people, and take other steps to draw Iran into the community of free and modern nations. Unfortunately, the Obama and Biden administrations have propped up the brutal Islamic theocracy that has hurt the Iranian people and threatened a nuclear war. They've been talking about threatening nuclear war this entire time, and now they're like, oh, it's bad to fucking threaten nuclear war. What the fuck are they talking about? You really want to talk about what Obama did in Iran? And Afghanistan? What the fuck? Remember that one time the CIA overthrew a democratic government again? Again? Ugh. Yeah, no, definitely not. No, no. Please, I recommend everybody who's already realized that this was a lot of CIA interference, please go and watch the Jib podcast, JIB podcast. Go check it out. If you want to see me there, I did one episode and now they won't invite me back because I gave them a hard time. We were talking about Guatemala. Go and check it out. It was fun. Um for example, the Obama administration in 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly referred to as the Iran nuclear deal, gave Islamic regime a crucial monetary lifeline after the Green Movement protests in 2009, which, while ultimately unsuccessful, did succeed in weakening the regime and showing the world that younger Iranians want freedom. So then Obama did something right? What do you mean? The Obama administration and then the thing that Obama put forward, what? Or is that backwards? Maybe I've got it backwards. Anyway, instead of pressuring the Iranian theocracy to move towards democracy, the Obama administration threw the brutal regime an economic lifeline by it was backwards. Okay. Economic lifeline by giving hundreds of billions of dollars to the Iranian government and providing other sanction relief. The economic relief did not moderate the regime, but emboldened its brutality, its efforts to expand its nuclear weapons program, and its support for global terrorism. Former President Obama has admitted his lack of support for the Green Movement during his administration was an error and blamed it on poor advisors. Yet those same advisors are involved with the Biden administration's insistence on reducing pressure on the theocracy and resurrecting the nuclear deal. I'm going to citation needed that. Again, I'm willing to kind of maybe give them the benefit of the doubt on this, but I'm going to citation needed it because I'm betting it's a little bit more complicated than what they're presenting. The next administration should neither preserve nor repeat the mistakes of the Obama and Biden administrations. The correct future policy for Iran is one that acknowledges that it is in U.S. national security interest, the Iranian people, human rights interest, and the broader global interest in peace and stability for the Iranian people to have the democratic government they demand. This decision should be free of the country's abusive leaders. Leaders must, of course, be made by the Iranian people, but the United States can utilize its own and others' economic and diplomatic tools to ease the path towards a free Iran and a renewed relationship with the Iranian people. It's really interesting listening to these people who are currently trying to instate a theocratic dictatorship that they want to free other people from theocratic dictatorships. It's very, fucking surreal. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Okay, so we're going to find out what their issue with Venezuela is. Once a model of democracy and a true U.S. ally, because you can't be a U.S. ally if you're not a democracy, I guess. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which means that they wouldn't be their own ally if they got what they wanted, I think. Trump let 5,000 Taliban members go free from prison, and one is now in charge of Afghanistan. Great. Great. You mean that Afghanistan that Trump withdrew from ad hoc? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was Afghanistan. Hey, you want me to send you the chat log from the Furry Hackers and the Heritage Foundation? Yeah. Yes. I would love that. That would be lovely. Once a model of democracy and a true U.S. ally, the Bolivarian Republic of Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has all but collapsed under the communist regimes of the late Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. In the 24 years since Hugo Chavez was first elected Venezuelan president in 1999, the country has violently cracked down on pro-democracy citizens and organizations. Definitely not what you're describing here. Shattered its once oil-rich economy, empowered domestic criminal cartels, and helped fuel a hemispheric refugee crisis. Venezuela has swung from being one of the most prosperous, if not the most prosperous, country in South Africa to being one of the poorest. Its communist leadership has also drawn closer to some of the United States' greatest international foes, including the PRC and Iran, which have long sought a foothold in the Americas. Indeed, Venezuela serves as a reminder of just how fragile democratic institutions that are not maintained can be. To contain Venezuela's communism and aid international partners, the next administration must take important steps to put Venezuela's communist abusers on notice while making strides to help the Venezuelan people. The next administration must work to unite the hemisphere against the significant but underestimated threat of the southern hemisphere, Russia. One issue today that starkly divides conservatives is the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The common ground seems to be recognition that presidential leadership in 2025 must chart the course. One school of conservative thought holds that Moscow's illegal war of the aggression against Ukraine drags on. Russia presents major challenges to U.S. interests as well as to peace, stability, and the post-Cold War security order in Europe. This viewpoint argues for continued U.S. involvement, including military aid, economic aid, and presence of NATO and the U.S. troops if necessary. The end goal of the conflict must be to defeat Russian President Vladimir Putin and a return to pre-invasion borderlines. Another school of conservative thought denies that U.S.-Ukraine support is the national security interest of America at all. Ukraine is not a member of the NATO alliance and is one of the most corrupt nations in the region. Based on what? European nations directly affected by the conflict should aid in the defense of Ukraine, but the U.S. should not continue its involvement. This viewpoint desires a swift end to the conflict and a negotiated settlement between Ukraine and Russia. Russia's gonna negotiate. The tension between these competing positions has given rise to a third approach. This conservative viewpoint eschews both isolationism and interventionism. Rather, each foreign policy decision first must ask the question, what is in the interest of the American people? The U.S. military engagement must clearly fall within U.S. interests, to be fiscally responsible, and protect American freedom, liberty, and sovereignty, all while recognizing Communist China as the greatest threat to U.S. interest. Thus, with respect to Ukraine, continued U.S. involvement must be fully paid for, limited to military aid, while European allies address Ukraine's economic needs and have a clearly defined national security strategy that does not risk American lives. Regardless of the viewpoint, all sides agree that Putin's invasion of Ukraine is unjust. No, they don't. No, they don't. No, they don't. That's a lie. And that the Ukrainian people have the right to defend their homeland. No, they don't. No, they don't. That's a fucking lie. Furthermore, the conflict has severely weakened Putin's military strength and provided a boost to NATO unity and importance of European nations. The next conservative president has a generational opportunity to bring resolution to the foreign policy tensions within the movement and chart a new path forward that recognizes Communist China as the defining threat to U.S. interests of the 21st century. So Putin and Russia aren't really a problem, is what this is saying. It's actually, we should just focus on China and ignore Russia entirely. Hello. Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Peace and stability in Northeast Asia and are vital interests of the United States. There's not peace and stability in Northeast Asia. The Republic of Korea, South Korea, and Japan are critical allies for ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. They are indispensable military, economic, diplomatic, and technology partners. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, or North Korea, must be deterred from military conflict. The United States cannot permit the DPRK to remain a de facto nuclear power with the capacity to threaten the United States or its allies. This interest is both critical to the defense of the American homeland and the future global non-proliferation. The DPRK must not be permitted to profit from its blatant violations of international commitments or to threaten other nations with nuclear blackmail. So you're allowed to do it, but nobody else is allowed to do it. Oh, okay. Both interests can only be served if the U.S. disallows the DPRK's rogue regime behavior. Other international engagements, Western Hemisphere. The United States has a vested interest in relatively united and economically prosperous Western Hemisphere. Nonetheless, the region now has an overwhelming number of socialist or progressive regimes. Regimes? which are at odds with the freedom and growth-oriented policies of the U.S. and other neighbors who increasingly pose hemispheric security threats. A new approach is therefore needed, one that simultaneously allows the U.S. to reposture it in its best interest and helps regional partners enter a new century of growth and opportunity. The following core policies must be part of this new direction. A sovereign Mexico policy. Mexico is currently a national security disaster. Bluntly stated, Mexico can no longer qualify as a first world nation. Really? Is that true? I'm gonna citation needed that. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. It has functionally lost its sovereignty to muscular criminal cartel that effectively run the country. The current dynamic is not good for either U.S. citizens or Mexicans, and the perfect storm created by the cartel state has negative effects that are damaging the entire hemisphere. The next administration must both adopt a posture that calls for full sovereignty of Mexico and take all steps at its disposal to support the result in a rapid and in as rapid a fashion as possible. So I'm back to what I was saying yesterday. Run on the policy that you want to invade Mexico and reinstate democracy in Mexico in a drug war. That'll go well. I think people would buy that, to be honest. I do think that, like, the Republican Party, like, the Republican voters would be like, fuck yeah. Texas actually gets to, like, play with its guns and shoot people. Hello. A fentanyl-free frontier. The same cartels that parasitically run Mexico are also working with the PRC to fuel the largest drug crisis in history of North America. These Mexican cartels are working closely with Chinese fentanyl precursor chemical manufacturers, importing their precursor chemicals into Mexico, manufacturing fentanyl on Mexican soil, and shipping it to the United States and elsewhere. This highly potent narcotic is having an unprecedented lethal impact on American citizenry. The next administration must leverage its new insistence on a sovereign Mexico and work with other Western Hemisphere partners, i.e. Canada, to halt the fentanyl crisis and put a decisive end to this precedented public health threat. As a Canadian, I do not want to go and participate in war with America again. Particularly, one, because I don't want to, and particularly, two, because American soldiers keep shooting Canadian soldiers, and I don't want to go until we get some kind of guarantee that that's going to stop fucking happening. It happened too much last time, and I don't want that shit to happen again, because that was awful. Please don't. So what we've got here is a documents that heavily trying to fearmonger to win more votes to get money out of people who can't afford to give. Yes, that too. Fix your own opium crisis, USA, right? We'd give a new meaning to the war on drugs. Yeah. A hemisphere-centered approach to industry and energy. The next administration has a golden opportunity to make key economic changes that will not only provide tremendous economic opportunities for Americans, but will also serve as an economic boon for the entire Western Hemisphere. First, the United States must do everything possible with both resources and messaging to shift global manufacturing and industry from more distant points around the globe, especially from increasingly hostile and human rights abusing PRC to Central and South American countries. Re-hemisphering manufacturing and industry closer to home will not only eliminate some of the more recent supply chain issues that damage the United States economy, but will also represent a significant economic improvement for parts of America that needs growth and stabilization. The first thing President Trump did, or ex-President Trump did when he took office, was put steel tariffs on Canada. Fuck off. You're not gonna fool me. Similarly, the United States must work with Mexico, Canada, and other countries to develop a hemisphere-focused energy policy that will reduce reliance on distant and manipulatable sources of fossil fuels. Canada's moving towards green energy. Just come to green energy with us. Restore the free flow of energy among the hemisphere's largest producers. Oh, they want more oil from Alberta. Got it. And work together to increase energy production, including for nations that are looking for dramatic economic expansion. We should just piss off... Canada should just piss off fucking Alberta again by being like, you're only allowed to export a certain amount from the oil fields, and like pick a number, right? Pick a number that makes sense, but I don't know what the number would be. So pick a number, right? And so it's like you can decide who you're selling to. So it goes to the highest bidder, but you limit the amount that you're even selling to to be like, no, energy crisis. This is about a crisis of climate change. That would be fucking hilarious. I don't even know what the consequences of that would even be. It'd be horrible. A local approach to security threats. Western Hemisphere nations, including those in the Caribbean, arguably have stronger cultural and historical ties to the United States than most other countries and regions in the world. Yet Central and South America are moving rapidly into the hemisphere of anti-American external state actors, including PRC, Iran, and Russia. Canada doesn't like you either, by the way. I don't know if you noticed. Canada's kind of been pretty fed up with America for the last, 10 years, give or take. We're a little bit less annoyed with Biden, but not a whole ton. Specific countries in the Americas, such as Venezuela, Colombia, Ghana, is that Ghana or Guinea? Guyana? I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. I'm bad at geography. And Ecuador are either increasingly regional security threats in their own rights or vulnerable to hostile extracontinental powers. The U.S. has an opportunity to lead these democratic neighbors to fight against external pressures of threats from abroad and address local regional security concerns. This leadership and collaboration must span all tools at the disposal of U.S. allies and partners, including security force cooperation. Oh, proxy war. Middle East and North Africa. The next administration must re-engage with Middle East and North African nations and not abandon the region, like Trump did, ad hoc, as it was described by chat. Without U.S. leadership, the region may tumble further into chaos or fall prey to American adversaries. The recommendation requires a multi-dimensional strategy. First, the U.S. must prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear technology and delivery capabilities, and more broadly block Iranian ambitions. This means inter alia reinstituting and expanding Trump administration sanctions, providing security assistance for regional partners, supporting through public diplomacy and others, freedom-seeking Iranian people in their revolt against the mullahs, and ensuring Israel has both the military means and the political support and flexibility to take what it deems to be appropriate measures to defend itself against Iranian regime and its regional proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Oh, pro-genocide. Yay. Oh, it's northeast of Brazil. Thank you. I appreciate that. Side note, can we point out here that they also don't want to bring any of these people to America with all the foreign policy stuff that they were just talking about. So, the visas and all of that shit. So they want everybody to fix they want to take credit for everybody else fixing the problems. Second, the next administration should build on the Trump administration's diplomatic success by encouraging other Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, to enter the Abraham Accords. Related policies should include reversing, as appropriate, the Biden administration's degraduation of the longstanding partnership with Saudi Arabia. The Palestinian Authority should be defunded. A further key priority is keeping Turkey in the Western fold and a NATO ally. This includes a vigorous outreach to Turkey to dissuade it from hedging towards China or Russia or China, which is likely to require a rethinking of U.S. support for YPG/PKK, People's Protection Units, and Kurdian Workers' Party. Kurdish forces, which Ankara believes are an existential threat to its security for the foreseeable future. Oh, look, Genocide 2, Electric Boogaloo. In the much longer than one new administration, Middle East oil will play a key role in the world economy. Therefore, the U.S. must continue to support its allies and compete with its economic adversaries, including China. Relations with Saudi Arabia should be strengthened in a way that seriously curtails Chinese influence in Riyadh. Hey, listen, hear me out. any means necessary to lessen these people. But why wouldn't you do green energy then and lessen the value of oil overall? Wouldn't that do something? Maybe? No? Also pro genocide shit. Third is the U.S. national interest to build the Middle East Security Pact that includes Israel, Egypt, the Gulf states, and potentially India as a second Quad arrangement, protecting freedom of navigation of the Gulf and in the Red Sea / Suez Canal is vital to the world's economy and therefore the U.S. prosperity as well. In North Africa, security cooperation with the European allies, especially France, will be vital to limit growing Islamist threat and incursion of Russia influence through positioning of the Wagner Group. How much you want to bet France doesn't want to work with America anymore? Unwelcome nuanced 10-yard penalty. So, sorry, my bad. The U.S. cannot neglect a concern for human rights and minority rights, which must be balanced with strategic and security considerations. Except for Palestine, I guess. Special attention must be paid to challenges of religious freedom, especially in the status of the Middle Eastern Christians and other religious minorities. As well as the human trafficking epidemic to the region. Sub-Saharan Africa. Africa's importance to U.S. foreign policy and strategic interest is rising and will only continue to grow. Its explosive population growth, large reserves of industry-dependent minerals, proximity to key maritime shipping routes, and its collective diplomatic power ensure the continent's global importance. Yet, as Africa's strategic significant force has grown, the U.S.'s relative influence has declined. Terrorist activity on the continent has increased while America's competitors are making significant gains for their own national interests. The PRC's companies dominate the African supply chain for certain minerals critical to emerging technologies. Africa's nations comprise major country bloc elements that shield the PRC and Russia from international isolation for their human rights abuses. And the African nation staunchly supports PRC's foreign policy goals on issues such as Hong Kong occupation, South China Sea's dispute arbitration, and Taiwan. The new administration can correct the strategic failings of existing policy by prioritizing Africa and by undertaking fundamental changes in how the United States works in African nations. At bare minimum, the next administration should shift strategic focus from assistance to growth, reorient the focus of U.S. overseas deployment assistance away from a standalone humanitarian development aid, and focus on fostering free market systems in African countries by incentivizing and facilitating U.S. private sector engagement in these countries. You want more American companies to take advantage of poverty wages in other countries. Okay. Fuck you. Development aid alone does little to develop countries and can fuel corruption and violent conflict. Well, the United States should always be willing to offer emergency and humanitarian relief. Both U.S. and African long-term interests are better served by a free market-based, private growth-focused strategy to Africa's economic challenges. Let's just put trickle-down economics in other places because it worked so well in America. Counter malign Chinese activity on the continent. This should include the development of powerful public diplomacy efforts to counter Chinese influence campaigns with commitments to freedom of speech and free flow of information. The creation of a template of digital hygiene program that African countries can access to sanitize and protect their sensitive communications networks from espionage by PRC and other hostile actors. The recognition of Somaliland statehood and hedge against the U.S.'s deteriorating position in Djibouti? I don't know if I'm... How loud are they saying the quiet part out? Yes. and focusing on supporting American companies involved in industries important to the U.S. national interest or that have competitive advantage in Africa. Listen, if any of these nations got hold of this document, I'd be picking fucking Russia too. Pick Canada. Pick Canada instead. Work with us. Work with us. We'll work with you. We're nice guys. We'll help you out. We should just take over. Let Canada take it over. We'll take care of it. We're great. DJI does not help me. I don't know how to pronounce DJI. Digi? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a poor tiny person. Counter the furtherance of terrorism. African country-based terrorist groups like Boko Haram, or Haram. RJ. Oh. May currently lack the capability to attack the United States, but at least some of them would eventually try, if allowed, to consolidate their operations and plan such attacks. The immediate threat they pose, well, you just said that they don't pose immediate threat, but they might pose a threat later, lies in their ability and willingness to strike American targets in their regions of operation or harm U.S. interest in other ways. The U.S. should support capable African military and security operations through the State Department and other federal agencies responsible for granting foreign military education, training, and security assistance. But no back and forths. No go. Djibouti. Yeah, that's okay. Hopefully that was right. But no foreigners, not bringing anybody into America, and not having any kind of exchange program of education that might help those countries. Anyway, trickle down. Build a coalition of the cooperative. Rather than thinning limited federal resources by spending funds across all countries, including some that are unsupportive or even hostile to the United States, the next administration should focus on these countries with which the U.S. can expect a mutually beneficial relationship. How do you expect a country to give mutual benefit to you when you think they're lesser than you by so much? That's admitting ostensibly that they're not actually lesser than you. By the way, that's a tacit admission. After being designated focused countries by the State Department, such nations should receive a full suit of American engagement. That said, the next administration should still maintain a baseline level of contact, even with those countries with which has less than fruitful relation, in order to encourage positive developments and be in a position to seize unexpected diplomatic opportunities as they arise. Ew. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about that. There's so many. That's a lot to unpack, and I gotta keep going. Focus on the core diplomatic activities and stop promoting policies birthed in American culture wars. African nations are particularly and reasonably non-receptive to the U.S. social policies such as abortion and pro-LGBT initiatives being imposed on them. The U.S. states should focus on core security, economics, and human rights engagements. LGBT and abortion rights are human rights engagements, you dense motherfuckers. You know what? Maybe it's early, but I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Why is this muted every time?
That was dumb. About the way that I disagree infinitely about the way that was dumb, and I hate it. By the way, I hate it. I think it's dumb, and I hate it. And I think that it's dumb, and it's stupid.
Oh, God. Alright, anyway. With African partners and reject the promotion of divisive policies that hurt the deepening and shared goals between the U.S. and its African partners. They just went on a tangent being like, we should care about the people of those places and encourage them, blah, blah, blah. And then they're just like, yeah, but none of those people. Fuck those people. Fun fact, Africa countries are actually receptive to those things. Oh, really? You don't say. You mean that maybe we would have less of an epidemic in other countries if, like Catholics stopped telling people not to use condoms and take vaccines? What? No, I can't. No, no. This is a lie? So they wouldn't just go out and lie to people. They go, no, no. Oh, come on, no. Europe. American foreign policy has long benefited from cooperation with the countries of Europe, generally the EU, and any conservative administration should build on this resource. Yet the transatlantic relationship is complex with security, trade, and political dimensions. First, the Europe, Eurasia, and Russian region is made up of relatively wealthy and technologically advanced societies that should be expected to bear a fair share of both security needs and global security architecture. So now you want to work with Russia? The United States cannot be expected to provide a defense umbrella for countries unwilling to contribute appropriately. At stake after 2024 will be examining the status of the Wales pledge of 2% of gross domestic product towards defense by NATO members. The new administration will also want to encourage nations to exceed that pledge. Second, transatlantic trade is a significant part of the global economy. So you want other people to contribute more than 2% and you contribute less than 2%. You're lazy and greedy. Got it. Noted. Second, transatlantic trade is significant part of. Remind me to talk to you guys when I'm doing art stuff about my concepts about dragon design. Second, transatlantic trade is significant part of the global economy, and it is the U.S. national interest to amplify it, especially because this means weaning Europe of its dependence on China. However, there are also transatlantic trade tensions between the transatlantic trade tensions that disturb the U.S.-EU relationship, and that have been evident across administrations. The U.S. must undertake comprehensive review of trade agreements between the EU and the United States to ensure the U.S. businesses are treated fairly and built productive reciprocity. Oh, you mean like Tesla being told to go fuck itself for its priority charging? Or are you talking more about the Paris Accords? Both? Outside the EU, trade with the post-Brexit UK needs urgent development before London slips back into the orbit of the EU. Oh, they want more Brexit. Oh yeah, that's something that the people in Britain want in the EU. That's what they want. They want more Brexit. Yay! Ooh. Okay. Third, in the wake of Brexit, EU foreign policy now takes place without UK input, which disadvantages the United States given that the UK has historically been aligned with many US positions. I'm kind of surprised they're not just like, we should just adopt Brexit into America and it should just be sovereign American land now and they can just be US citizens. Let's do that. That seems opportunistic to me, no? And then they can do the same thing when if Quebec wants to leave Canada, they can just the US can be like, yeah, come and be American, because they don't want to be American either. That's America should break up with Europe. Therefore, US diplomacy must be more attentive to inner EU developments while also developing new allies inside of the EU, especially the Central European countries in the eastern flank of the EU, which is most vulnerable to Russian aggression. South and Central Asia. Many key American interests and responsibilities are found in South and Central Asia, specifically continuing to advance the bilateral relationship with India to mutual benefit as a crucial objective for the US policy. India plays a crucial role in countering the Chinese threat and securing free and open Indo-Pacific. It is a critical security guarantor for key routes for air and sea travel linking the East and West, and is an important emerging U.S. economic partner. For instance, in 2019, the Department of Defense Indo-Pacific Strategy Report noted that the Indian Ocean area, quote, is the nexus of global trade and commerce, with nearly half of the world's 90,000 commercial vessels and two-thirds of the global oil trade traveling through the sea lanes. The region boasts some of the fastest-growing economies on Earth. Well, I'm glad they fucking recognize that fucking India matters. Good lord. We've been looking at Canada as 13 shiny new stars for a while. Oh yeah. Meanwhile, the threat of transnational terrorism remains acute. The humiliating withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan after a 20-year military campaign has created new challenges. Who was that again? It has provided an opportunity to reset the deeply troubled U.S.-Pakistan relations and reassess U.S. counterterrorism strategy in the region. The long-standing India-Pakistan rivalry and tensions regarding the disputed territory of Kashmir continue to pose risks to regional stability, especially because both countries are nuclear powers. God damn, I'm glad I talked to Manya, because like I would have struggled with that word in the past. Good job, me. Thanks, Manya. The State Department's role in strengthening the regional security and economic framework linking the U.S. and India is crucial. In addition, the department has important functional responsibilities in dealing with a range of threats from nuclear proliferation and transnational proliferation. Well, sorry, I gotta sneeze. While American statecraft should also seek to improve bilateral relationships throughout the region, U.S. policy must be clear-eyed and realistic about the perfidiousness. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Perfidiousness. Perfidiousness. Guilty to purify. Thanks. Violating good faith or vows. Got it. Thank you. I did pronounce it correct. Of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan and military political rule in Pakistan, there can be no expectation of normal relations with either. We're at page 121. We're trucking. Look at us fucking go. Holy balls. The priority for statecraft is advancing the U.S.-Indian role as a cornerstone of the Quad. Speaking of which, by the way. Hey, we're doing good, yeah. Going slow to go fast. Thank you. The priority for statecraft is advancing U.S.-Indian role as a cornerstone of the Quad, a cooperative framework including the U.S., India, Japan, and Australia. The Quad is comprised of key nations in coordinating efforts for a free and open Indo-Pacific. It is an overarching group that nests the key U.S. bilateral and trilateral cooperative efforts that facilitate U.S. collaborative efforts across the Indo-Pacific. The State Department should also encourage the Quad Plus concept that allows other regions' powers to participate in Quad coordination on issues of mutual interest. Further, the State Department must support an integrated federal effort to deliver a revamped regional strategy for South Asia, as well as leading the execution of key tasks to implement the strategy. The Arctic. Because of Alaska, the U.S. is an Arctic nation. Listen, just send Alaska to Alaska, and like Detroit should just be Canadian. Let's be real. The Arctic is a vast expanse of land and sea rich in resources including fish, minerals, and energy. For example, the region is estimated to contain 90 million barrels of oil and 1/4 of the world's undiscovered natural gas reserves. The Arctic is lightly populated. Only 4 million people in the world live above the Arctic Circle, with more than half of those living in Russia. Around 68,000 people in Alaska live above the Arctic Circle. However, the sheer immensity of the Alaskan Arctic means its population density is less than 1 person per square mile. Are we going to talk about how Russia and America keep trying to take sovereign Canadian land that's far enough north? Like, really? The United States has several strong interests in the Arctic region. The rate of melting ice during the summer months has led to increased interest not only from shipping and tourism sectors, but also from Americans' global competitors who are interested in exploiting the region's strategic importance and accessing its bounty of natural resources. In the not-too-distant future, there will be a growing interest in the Arctic from both states and non-state actors like alike. China has been open about its interest in the region primarily as a highway for trade, but also for its rich natural resources. While the PRC's increasing intervention in Arctic affairs has been strained because it does not have an Arctic coastline, Russia does, and Russia has made no secret of its view that the Arctic is vital for economic and military reasons. Russia has invested heavily in new and refurbished Arctic bases and cold weather equipment and capabilities. The North Star of U.S. Arctic policy should remain national sovereignty, safeguarded through the robust compatibilities as well as through diplomatic, economic, and legal attentiveness. The next administration should embrace the view that NATO must acknowledge that it is, in part, an Arctic alliance. With a likely accession of Finland and Sweden into NATO, to NATO. Actually, I kind of love that. That sounds great. Every Arctic nation except for Russia will be a NATO member state. NATO has been slow to appreciate that the Arctic is a theater that it must defend, especially considering Russia's brazen aggression against Ukraine. NATO must develop and implement an Arctic strategy that recognizes the importance of the region and ensures that Russian use of Arctic waters and resources does not exceed a reasonable footprint. The U.S. should unapologetically pursue American interests in the Arctic by promoting economic freedom in the region. Economic freedom spurs prosperity, innovation, and respects the rules of law, jobs, and sustainability. It sure does. Who are you going to have live there, bro? Most important economic freedom. You know that the Arctic and the people who live there are First Nations people, right? You're going to treat them like shit, aren't you? Of course you are. Like, there are protections in Canada in those areas that enable First Nations people and enable their cultures for sustainability purposes. Like that, you can't just pretend that doesn't exist, America. Yeah, you can. Of course you're going to do that. Sorry, excuse me. Economic freedom, blah, 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 blah. Most important, economic freedom can help to keep the Arctic stable and secure. Yeah, sure, whatever. Trickle-down economics for Santa's elves. The U.S. should work to ensure that shipping lanes in the Arctic remain available to all global commercial traffic and free of onerous fees and burdensome administration, regulatory, and military requirements. The Arctic will become the new Wild Wild West. Get on it, Hollywood. We need stories. We need comic books about like the Wild Wild West, except it's instead of taking place on the plains and like of America, it's taking place on the ice, and everybody's got fucking skates. And snowshoes. That sounds hilarious. Blah, 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 blah. Regulatory and military requirements. Well, this should be the next administration's policy with respect to all countries that might seek to block free-flowing commercial traffic. The next administration will clearly have to exert substantial attention towards Russia. Both the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. Navy are vital tools to ensure unmonopolized Arctic. It is imperative that the Navy and the Coast Guard continue to expand their fleets, including planned icebreaker acquisitions to ensure Arctic access for the United States and other friendly actors. The remote and harsh conditions of the Arctic also make unmanned systems investment and use particularly appealing to provide additional situational awareness, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The Coast Guard should also consider upgrading facilities such as its Barrow Station to reinforce its Arctic capabilities and demonstrate a greater commitment to the region. The People's Republic of China has declared itself a near-Arctic state, which is an imaginary term non-existent in international discourse. The U.S. states should work with like-minded Arctic nations, including Russia, so look out for Russia, include Russia, stay away from Russia, use Russia, to raise legitimate concerns about PRC's so-called Polar Silk Road ambitions. Concerning Greenland, the opening of a U.S. consultant in Nuuk is welcome. A formal year-round diplomatic presence is an effective way for the U.S. to better understand local political and economic dynamics. Furthermore, given Greenland's geographic proximity and its rising potential as a commercial and tourist location, the next administration should pursue policies that enhance economic ties between the U.S. and Greenland. International organizations defending, protecting American people, and advancing their interests requires the United States to engage in broad spectrum of bilateral and multilateral relationships, including participating in international organizations. Working with other governments through international organizations like the United Nations, the UN, can be tremendously useful, but membership in these organizations must always be understood as a means to attain defined goals rather than an end itself. Engagement with international organizations is one relatively easy way for the United States to defend its interests and to seek to address problems in concert with other nations, but it is not the only option. The American diplomats should be clear-eyed about international organization strengths and weaknesses. When such institutions act against U.S. interests, the United States must be prepared to take appropriate steps in response, up to including withdraw. The manifest failure of and corruption of the World Health Organization, WHO, during COVID-19 pandemic, is an example of the danger that international organizations pose to the United States and its interest. What the fuck? Outlaws riding caribou instead of horses is a mood, right? And moose. Let's go. I'm here for this. I'm here for this fan fiction or this futuristic cowboy western in the Arctic. But the manifest failure and corruption of the World Health Organization. I'm just going to drop a really quick citation needed, and then we'll move on, because that's a lot to unpack as well, and I don't have time to talk about it. And I am sorry that I don't have enough time to talk about it. All right. The next administration must end blind support for international organizations. If international organization is effective and advances American interests, the U.S. should support it. If international organizations is ineffective or does not support American interests, the U.S. should not support it. So America just wants to be a bully and do and get whatever they want. They want to be the king of the world. Cosmic geopolitical hockey. Yes. Those that are effective will still require consistent pressure from U.S. officials to ensure that they remain effective. America should lose its veto power. Here's how veto power should work in the UN. You get veto power, and you get to use it 3 times. Once you've used up your 3 times, you do not get more veto power until you do something valuable enough to earn veto power back, and then you get a veto power. So you can, collect veto powers. You can only ever have 3 at a time. That's how it should work. As fucking America vetoes fucking ceasefire in a genocide, fucking assholes. Anyway, serious consideration should also be given to withdraw from organizations that no longer have value, quietly undermines U.S. interests or goals, or disproportionately rely on U.S. financial contributions to survive. The Trump administration's tough love approach to international organizations served American interests. No, it didn't. It made you guys a fucking laughingstock. But sure. The United Nations Human Rights Council, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, the United Nations Relief and Workers Agency, and the WHO. For example, the Trump administration withdrew from or terminated funding for the United Nations Human Rights Council, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, the United Nations Relief and Work Agencies, and the WHO. That is medical, science, human rights, and education that you pulled out of, that you're bragging about, while demanding everybody send you their best and brightest, and wanting the best people and the best educated people in fields in your country. Go fuck yourselves. You guys fucking suck. The results were redeployment of taxpayer dollars to better uses, citation needed, and other organizations, quote, getting the message that the United States will not allow itself and its money to be used to undermine its own interest. How is health, safety, science advancements, education, and human rights against America's fucking interests? What do you mean? Talk about saying the quiet part out loud, right? That's the quiet part out loud, right? They want the best of the best, but they don't want anybody else to have it, but they only want to be sent for us, but they don't want to do any of the work. They want everybody else to do it for them. Basically, they want to be leeches off of the government, they want to leech off of everybody else. They want to be a welfare country for everybody else's work and effort that they put into their own people. You're fucking disgusting. Anyway. The Biden administration reversed many of these decisions. Good. Currently, U.S. funding for international organizations is more than $16 billion in fiscal year 2021, a sharp increase from $10.8 billion in fiscal year 2015. Millions of Americans' taxpayer dollars go to support policies and initiatives that hurt American and United States and American citizens. How does that hurt you? The next administration should direct the Secretary of State to initiate a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis of the U.S. participation in all international organizations. No, I haven't read The Hunger Games, sorry. This review should take into account longstanding provisions in federal law that prohibit the use of taxpayer dollar to promote abortion, population control, and terrorist activities. Abortion and terrorist activities in the same sentence. Like, they're the same fucking thing. This is insanity. I'm losing my mind. I'm not gonna be able to keep going after this. I'm not gonna survive, guys. I'm not gonna survive. We're on page 223 of 920. Oh, population control. What the fuck are you talking about? No more chemtrails, guys. No more chemtrails. Son of a bitch. As well as other applicable restrictions on funding the international organizations and agencies with a view of withholding U.S. funds in cases of abuse. So basically, do what we tell you or else. Okay. If people, you do realize that we're just going to stop working with you, right? Like, that's what's going to happen. Inevitably, that is what's going to happen, because not everybody's going to fucking kiss your ring, right? Not everybody's going to bow down and kowtow to lick America's boot, right? Like, that's just not what's going to happen. International organizations should not be used to promote radical social policies as if they were human rights priorities. Doing so undermines actual human rights and weakens U.S. credibility abroad. Define human right. Is the right to bodily autonomy a human right? Yes or no? I don't think you want to say no to that. The next administration should use its voice, influence, votes, and funding in international organizations to promote authentic human rights and respect for sovereignty based on the binding international obligations contained in treaties that have been constitutionally ratified by the U.S. government. It must promote a strict text-based interpretation of treaty obligation that does not consider human rights treaties as, quote, living instruments within the State Department and within international organizations that receive U.S. funding, including by making respect for sovereignty and authentic human rights a litmus test for personal discussions and election-based processes within international organizations. Yeah, what the fuck ever. The U.S. Commission of Unalienable Human Rights focused on the primacy of civil and political rights in its inaugural report. Inaugural report, there we go, which remains an important guidepost for bilateral and multilateral engagements on human rights. The Commission's report is a roadmap for revamping and re-energizing U.S. human rights policies and should be the basis for both structural and policy changes throughout the State Department. You know, except for women, trans people, gay people, and if you're not a straight white man. All U.S. multilateral engagements must be reevaluated in light of the work of the Commission and initiatives that promote controversial policies that must be halted and rolled back, not reviewed and reestablished, halted and rolled back. Guys, remember when I said that the conservatives are not conserving anything, they're actually reductive? There it is, in black and white, rolled back. It's reductive. It is paramount to create a healthy culture of respect for life, the family, sovereignty, and authentic human rights in international organizations and agencies. Yes, and the nuclear family is a new concept that is not used around the world. Trying to enforce that around the world is just not reasonable because it's not necessary. It's not a necessary component to life. Some people have no parents. Some people have 2 parents. Some people have 2 parents and an aunt or an uncle that live with them. Some people have grandparents and parents and aunts and uncles and cousins that all live with them. Like, stop it. Stop trying to isolate people. It's fucked up. Let people have their families and enjoy their families if that's what they want to do. Like, what the fuck? To support this goal, the U.S. led an effort during Trump's administration to forge a consensus among like-minded countries in support of human life, women's health. What the fuck? Women's health? Fuck you! and protection of the family. All U.S. foreign policy engagements that were produced and expanded under the Obama and Biden administration must be aligned with the Geneva Convention Declaration and the work of the U.S. Commission on Unalienable Human Rights. Abortion is in there, guys! Nuclear family is also a huge burden on the housing market. Good point. The U.S. government should not and cannot promote or fund abortion in international programs or multilateral organizations. See, what did I say? Technically, the U.S. can prevent its international funding from going towards abortions, but the U.S. will have greater impact by including like-minded nations and building a coalition launched through the Geneva Consensus Declaration with a view of shaping the work of international agencies by functioning as a united front. The COVID-19 pandemic made it painfully clear that both international organizations and some countries are only too willing to trample human rights in the name of public health. For example, the WHO was and remains willing to support the suppression of basic human rights partially because of its close relationship to human rights abusers like PRC. Citation needed. Citation needed. Like, no, fuck you. You're so full of shit. The next administration should unequivocally embrace the premise that humanity and international community can simultaneously tackle pandemic and other emergent health threats without impeding the rights of people. Nobody's rights were impeded. It must also become a vocal surrogate for people in countries where rights are being suppressed in the name of health. This will likely require greater restrictions on the supply of federal dollars. You want to spend more money and involve yourselves in who more that you just called corrupt a minute ago. God, fuck this document. And other health-focused international organizations pending adjustment of their policies. The U.S. do what we say. The United States must. Everybody should just look at America just leaving and be prepared for America to just be pulling out of everything and just be set up so that way it affects us all negatively. Not at all. That's what people should be preparing for, and people should be prepared to enable Americans who are trying to flee this fascist regime to other countries as refugees, and there should be special allotments to enable this. The United States must return to treating international organizations as vehicles for promoting American interests or taking steps to extract itself from those organizations, which is really funny because they're against these social policies or this culture war stuff as being overstepping, but they want to do the same thing. They want to do the exact same thing. They just want it to make sure that it agrees with them. Can anybody read? Is it just me? Am I? Hello? Oh. Shaping the future. I don't want your future. Your future sounds like ass. Development of a grand foreign policy strategy. Can I point out that most American companies already operate in a strong enough way outside of the American government and the American country that they would be perfectly fine? They would struggle for a bit, and they would take a hit, but they wouldn't, go under. And don't forget, the Republicans had the White House when the pandemic started. Yeah, so all of these overreaching WHO shit was stuff that was implemented by fucking Trump. Internal screaming intensifies. The shaping of the future. Development of the grand foreign policy strategy is key to the next administration's success, but without addressing structural and related issues of the State Department, the strategy will be at risk. The Hart-Rudman Commission calls for significant restructuring of the State Department specifically and foreign assistance program generally, stating that the funding increases could only be justified if there was greater confidence that institutions would use their funding effectively. Sadly, the exact opposite has occurred. The State Department has metastasized in structure and resources, but neither in function of the department nor in use of taxpayer dollars has improved. The next administration can take steps to remedy these deficiencies that allegedly exist. The State Department's greatest problem is certainly not an abundance of resources. As noted, the department boasts tens of thousands of employees and billions of dollars of funding, including significant amounts of discretionary funding. It also exists among a broader array of federal agencies that are duplicative, particularly when it comes to the provision of direct and indirect foreign assistance. Realistically, meaningful reform to the State Department will require significant streamlining. Again, redundancies are important. Below are some key structural operational recommendations. These people think that every department exists in a bubble and doesn't really affect other bubbles, and they just kind of make up overlap where they think it makes sense. Below are some key structural and operational recommendations that will be essential for the next administration's success, which will lay crucial foundations for other necessary reforms. You notice how it seems like the conservative, or the Republicans in America, are not capable of operating the government as it stands. Like, that's what they're saying. They're saying that the government doesn't work the way it does, where it does operate. It's clearly functioning right now, but that they can't operate under these circumstances. So they're saying that everything needs to be reformed and filled with their own people, right? And they got to get rid of all these silly checks and balances to prevent corruption. Weird, funny, weird admission. Develop a reorganization strategy. Despite periodic attempts by previous administrations, including the Trump administration, to make more than cosmetic changes to the State Department, its structure has remained largely unchanged since the 20th century. The State Department will better serve, which is really funny that you're saying, well, it's old, so it doesn't work. Meanwhile, you're like, but it worked when we should go back to working the way things were when they were old. The State Department will better serve administrations regardless of the party. If it were to be meaningfully streamlined, the next administration should develop a complete hypothetical reorganization of the department, one which would tighten accountability to political leadership, reduce overhead, eliminate redundancy. Don't eliminate redundancy. Redundancy is important. Waste fewer taxpayer resources, and recommend additional personnel-related changes for improvement of function. Such reorganization could be creative, but also carefully review specific structure-related problems that have been documented over the years. This reorganization effort would necessarily assess what office closures can be carried out with and without congressional approval. Timelines for action on these fronts should be developed accordingly, but speed should be a priority. Side note, if you think you're going to war with fucking China or whatever, and you streamline everything and bubble every single place, what do you think happens if China successfully takes out one of those places? Your whole system falls apart. It's all dominoes at that point. It makes you incredibly vulnerable. It seems like they're trying to turn America into a glass cannon. Consolidate foreign assistance authorities. Foreign assistance is a critical foreign policy tool that is too often disconnected from the federal government's practice of foreign policy. Bureaucrats spend significant energy resisting the use of non-emergency foreign assistance to leverage positive results for the United States. Yeah, you mean that they're not taking humanitarian aid away from people just because the government isn't doing exactly what you want right away? Wow. That's not something to brag about, guys, that you don't like that. Even though it is a perfectly reasonable proposition. No, it's not. That's not reasonable. That's insane. That's sociopathic. That's a lacking of any kind of empathy or respect for human life that you said was a majorly important thing, you fucking psychos. Holy shit. You're insane. The people who wrote this are fucking insane. These people need to be on a list. These people need to be in jail. These people need to be put on trial for treason or whatever the fuck. Disgusting. These are people that they're discussing about how to be war criminals. The coordination of foreign assistance dollars is also difficult because the foreign assistance budget and foreign loan issuance authorities and divided across numerous cabinet departments, smaller agencies, and other offices. They are literally talking about how they're going to fuck over their allies and assault the people of foreign nation allies to America. I want to die. The next administration should take steps to ensure that future foreign assistance clearly and unambiguously supports the president's foreign policy agenda. For example, the next administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Deployment, which is technically subordinate to the State Department, should be authorized to take the additional role of Director of Foreign Assistance and the rank of Deputy Secretary and oversees all foreign assistance. This role, which existed briefly during the George W. Bush administration before it was eliminated by the Obama administration, would empower a dual-hatted official to better align and coordinate with the man. So not only do you want to take out the redundancy, you want to put one guy in charge of multiple things. With the manifold foreign assistance programs across federal government, the next administration should also evaluate whether these multiple sources of foreign assistance are in the national interest. If not, develop a plan to consolidate foreign assistance authorities. Why aren't more people talking about this? Yeah, this is cartoon villainy. This is like a twirly mustache tied your wife to a train track because you had a different pronoun than I thought you did. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck am I reading? Make public diplomacy. This should have been written in crayon. Actually, now I want a version of this where they've changed all the font to Comic Sans and made it multicolored. Make public diplomacy and international... Some of the letters are backwards. International broadcasting serve American interests. A key part of U.S. foreign policy is the ability to communicate with not only government, but with peoples of the world. And so you can tell them how much you hate them more easily. Indeed, in some ways, communicating directly with the public is more important than communicating with governments, particularly in times of governmental conflict or disagreement. You just said that you should leverage the populace getting fucked over and not getting aid that they were getting before because the government didn't do something you wanted it to do. Now you're turning around and saying we need to talk to the public and ignore the government. What in the I'm getting whiplash. My brain cells are gonna file a lawsuit for medical claims. Particularly in times of governmental conflict or disagreement. Public diplomacy has historically been and remains vital to American foreign policy success. Unfortunately, U.S. policy diplomacy, which largely relies on taxpayer-funded international broadcasting outlets, has been deeply affected in recent years. Make PBS great again. The U.S. government's first foray into international broadcast started with a Voice of American radio broadcast in 1942, which was intended as a tool to communicate directly with the people of Europe during World War II. When did Guatemala happen? When was that? Was that after World War II? I forget. Give me the Wikipedia. That was 1954. I hate this document. The tool to communicate directly with the people of Europe during World War II. During the next half century, America's international broadcasting efforts both expanded and increased in sophistication as the United States shifted out of its hot war in Europe into a Cold War with the Soviet Union. U.S. international broadcasting prowess and confident willingness to communicate the correctness of American ideals in the face of global resistance arguably hit its peak near the conclusion of the Cold War in the 1980s. Yeah, people don't believe you anymore. Since the fall of Berlin, the Berlin Wall in 1989, the subsequent collapse of the Soviet and Eastern Bloc communism, factors include the false appeal of so-called peace divided triggered a slide in the U.S. ability to communicate a pro-freedom message to the rest of I'm sorry, did they just call the fall of the Berlin Wall a bad thing for America? Art share of how I feel right now? Okay, I'll go look. This shit is so ass. Yo. Yo, you right. Accurate. Where was I? Pro-freedom message to the rest of the world and its commitment to do so. Ironically, this slide accompanied the rise of the internet and mobile phone technologies, which arguably facilitated the most significant revolution in human communication since the invention of the printing press. Oh, you mean you couldn't control everything anymore? The United States must reassess its public diplomacy obligations by restoring an international broadcasting infrastructure as part of the broader U.S. foreign policy framework, consolidating broadcasting resources and recommitting to people focused on and pro-freedom messaging and content, except without any regulation as to what is misinformation, with no regulation about whether or not the information is good or correct. You're talking about putting in a state fucking radio station and TV show. Like, you understand how fucking fascist that is, right? Like, that's... you... Really? Can you just throw more money at PBS? Engage in cyber diplomacy. Cyberspace has become an arena for competition between the United States and nations that seek to export digital authoritarianism. Shut the fuck up. Cyberspace protection is critical to national security and deserving of commensurate diplomatic resources, defining, quote, the use of diplomatic tools to address issues arising in and through cyberspace, end quote. Cyber diplomacy is a key part to the United States government toolkit in preventing and addressing cyber threats. Oh, you mean like all the Russian paid people on YouTube and Twitter and all the fucking Nazi bots and Russian and Chinese interference in the elections and in your fucking, on your Twitter? The model for cyberspace that the U.S. espouses is based on democracy and freedom of information. It is, quote, an open, inoperable, secure, reliable market drive domain that reflects democratic values and protects privacy, end quote. The Russia-China, meanwhile... China and Russia, meanwhile, are authoritarian regimes, definitely not like America, and definitely not like what we're proposing right now. They have created technological tools to enforce dominance over their peoples, and the UN and international organizations dealing with cyberspace. They strive to push standards that assist their totalitarian efforts to undermine Western nations, which they are succeeding at doing, and this is a fucking example of them succeeding. This document is an example of them succeeding. Simultaneous Russia, China, and lesser adversaries. The comments, the Twitter comments underneath Trudeau posting that we're giving food to children nationally at school, being mad about it, is an example of it succeeding on Elon Musk's fucking goddamn piece of shit fucking whatever he did to Twitter. They have attempted to influence U.S. elections, succeeded. You already said that. Oh, what do you mean attempted to? You denied the Russia influence in 2016, and now you're saying they attempted to influence the elections. So now you're saying they attempted, but they failed? So you're acknowledging that it happened? You denied it earlier in this fucking... I hate this document. I'm losing my fucking mind. I'm gonna have to... How much more do we have? Simultaneously, Russia, China, and lesser adversaries exploit the more open networks of countries like the U.S. to undermine democracy through disinformation and propaganda. They have attempted to influence U.S. elections, enabled or encouraged actors to exploit cyber vulnerabilities. You mean like Tim Pool? You mean like Elon Musk? To commit theft or of real or intellectual property, and have challenged U.S. governmental, military, and critical infrastructure networks with targeted malware. In short, the cyberspace era has gradually evolved from one of exploration, innovation, and cooperation to one that retains these features, but is also marked by aggressive competition and persistent threats. To meet this reality, the State Department must move beyond its traditional model of attempting to reestablish non-binding informal world standards of acceptable cyberspace behavior. The State Department should work with allies to establish a clear framework and enforceable norms and for actions in cyberspace, moving beyond the voluntary norms of the United Nations groups of governmental experts. Then you should have more fucking judges and lawyers trained on cybercrime like harassment, for example, just off the top of my head, apropos of nothing, and should take it fucking seriously. I'm losing my mind. The State Department should work with its allies to establish blah 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 blah. The State Department should also assist the Department of Defense to go on offense against adversaries. Quote, deterrence of the strategic approach has not stemmed from the onslaught of cyber aggression below the level of armed conflict, end quote. The traditional U.S. defensive approach based on deterrence followed by reaction to cross red lines is no longer effective. Adversaries can evade these strategies through multiple tactical lines of action below the level of armed conflict, and such actions have a cumulative strategic effect. The State Department's role should be to work with allies and engage with adversaries when necessary to draw clear lines of unacceptable conduct. Global financial infrastructure and nuclear controls and public health are particularly important areas in which consensus may even be found across ideological lines. These missions' essential institutional initiatives should be joined with others to establish a presidentially directed and durable U.S. foreign policy. Conclusion. Oh my God, the conclusion. The next conservative president has the opportunity and the duty to restructure the creation and execution of U.S. foreign policy so that it is focused on his or her vision for the nation's role in the world. The policy ideas to reform recommendations outlined in this chapter provide guidance about how the State Department can contribute to this objective. In the main, this chapter refocuses attention away from the special interests and social exceptions that are used in some quarters to capture U.S. foreign policy. The ideas and recommendations herein are premised on the belief that a rigorous adherence to national interest is the most enduring foundation for U.S. grand strategy in the 21st century. Did we do it? Oh, thank God. I thought it was going to go on to the dot point format that we saw earlier. I was really scared. Yeah, the next conservative president. Yeah, the next American dictator. Author's note, thanks to the entire State Department chapter team, the leaders and staff of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project, and my colleagues at the Heritage Foundation's Davis Center. In particular, I would like to acknowledge the following colleagues. All right, people, these are the fuckers in charge. These are the fuckers responsible for this shit. So make sure you note down their names as fucking traitors to your country. And as fucking people trying to commit war crime. Russell Berman, Sarah Calvis, James Carafano, Spencer Chiritin, Wesley Coppersmith, Paul Dan, Steve Groves, Simon Hankinson, Joseph Humry, Michael Pillsbury, Max Premorak, Reed Rubenstein, Brett Schaffer, Jeff Smith, Hillary Tanoff, Aaron Walsh, and John Zadrozny. Yay. And then here's the citations, which we'll scroll through. I haven't seen the new video that you sent me. Maybe, should I play it? Should I play it as a thing? Traitors to democracy and common freaking sense, not just your country. Yeah, these people are like a threat to everybody. These people are an international threat. This is a terrorist organization. I get to go home. I finished in 2.5 hours. Good job, everybody. We did really good today. I know I was reading quickly. I know I fumbled a lot. I'm really sorry. But at least we got this done at a relatively fucking pleasant rate. That was way... Okay, you know what? I do have a critique. Chapter 6 was formatted way better than the prior chapters. The stuff in it was horrific. Probably a little bit more, maybe, than the rest of it. Although I do like, with all their talk of international affairs, Canada was mentioned like once tertiarily as another thing, and like inside of another thing. Mexico's all over it. They did one for everything except for Canada. There's just like Canada, they just didn't fucking... But at least the formatting of chapter 6 was way, way better. So I'll take, you know what? I'll take what I can get. That was horrible. I'm going away now. We're going to be on chapter 7. We'll start chapter 7 Wednesday next week. So join us, same bat time, same bat place, 12:30 on Wednesday for 2.5 hours. It seems to be my length of time of working on this. So good job, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I hate this. It's terrible. I know it's important. I'm going to say it every time. It's really important that we look at this shit. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I hope the next American administration does something about this, because if they don't, I really do think it's a really good idea for every foreign nation and country and peoples to pay attention and note how they can either take advantage of the destabilization of this and help the American people, as well as help their own countries by arm's lengthening America to the best of their abilities and establishing things that can do. Oh, thanks, Vlad. Chapter 7 is ironically named The Intelligence Community. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the hugs. Thank you. Thank you. I need to go buy alcohol. If you've been supporting me financially to feed my, saving my brain cells with alcohol, I greatly appreciate it. I will go give Puck some boops and some snuggles. I'm going to take a break. I'll be back at 4, probably, about an hour and a half or so, to do art on Twitch. So go and join me over there if you would like. I'll probably still talk about some of this stuff, but mostly we're just chilling, hanging out, and not being bogged down by, like, the worst of the worst. It's very discussion based, and it's art. So come and join me there. There's a link down in the description. Thank you so much. I'm doing my best. Have a good day, everybody. I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna let Mark take us out like normal. Have a good day, everybody. I hope everybody has a good weekend. I will see you tomorrow where we'll be talking about a couple of different things, one of which being some racism coming out of Megs and Black Wolf and the company towards Mania, which we'll be talking about, as well as Tim Pool and their whole bunch of traitorous activity by taking money from Russia to fuel disparagement and divisiveness amongst the American people. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
I disagree infinitely about the way that was dumb, and I hate it. And I hate it. By the way, I hate it. I think it's dumb, and I hate it. And I think that it's dumb, and it's stupid. I think that it's stupid.